All 32 NFL defenses ranked from worst to first for the upcoming 2025 season. What is most important, in my opinion, coaching, pass rush, run defense. Everything is factored in, and stats could be very misleading when it comes to defense. Let's break down the rankings. Number 32 is going to be the Carolina Panthers. Yes, you could say they got better this offseason, but you actually could say that about every single defense in the league. I like their draft. They added a lot of young players, especially in the edge rush position. They moved on from Clowney, added those young players. It's the right move for the future, but how much better are they today, this year, with those guys? They do get a boost in the interior, adding Wharton, getting Derek Brown back. Much needed boost. Derek Brown is great. That run defense, Carolina Panthers last year, was one of the worst I've ever seen. So they get a boost with those guys, but it's going to have to be significantly better for me to take that run defense serious. And if you can't stop the run, it's pretty tough for your defense to hold up in games. Linebacker units lacking. That kind of plays a part in the run defense. Secondary is kind of held up by J.C. Horn and Mareg, but I like the Mareg addition. Horn's got to stay healthy. Jacksonville's at 31. They could get a boost just by having that new staff, right? The coaching was pretty brutal. Too much man coverage last year at the wrong times. Kind of the problem the last couple years, even with different staffs, but my problem with Jacksonville, they're a pretty balanced defense, a lot of average to below average players, not the whole defense. They have some studs, Josh Allen, etc. But my problem is I feel like, they're not the worst pass defensive football. They're not the worst run defensive football, but they're not great at either. I feel like teams aren't going to fear them. I feel like any team could pretty much throw or run on them. Doesn't mean they're going to go crazy on them. That's kind of the issue. They don't really have that dominant area, in my opinion. The Raiders take a hit, losing a lot of guys this offseason and free agency. Spillane was a big one. Nate Hobbs was a big one. Mareg was a huge one, obviously. And we expected Christian Wilkins to be out there this year, and they surprisingly move on from him. I mean, I like Patrick Graham as a defensive coordinator. I love Max Crosby. Those two guys alone, a coach and a star player, can make this defense look better than it actually is on paper, but they are lacking in a lot of areas. They're relying on some young players. You worry about corner. You worry about safety taking a little bit of a step down, perhaps. I do think Jeremy Chin could play all right for them. You worry about linebacker taking a hit compared to last year. You worry about interior defensive lines, lacking a little bit. So that's a tough part there. Tennessee Titans at 29. I like this defense, except for the most important spot, the edge position. Sounds like Jeffrey Simmons might get some reps there. I'm excited about that. I'm a big Jeffrey Simmons fan, big T'Vondre Sweat fan. The interior defensive line seems pretty loaded. They could stop the run at a pretty high level. If L'Jarius Sneed's out there, that secondary is actually very underrated. It actually can be very solid. It's just that edge position is really holding them back. I mean, this team if they got a stud edge rusher in there, I mean, it's a massive boost from 29, right? They might be a little bit lacking with the pass rush. Is Sneed going to be out there? Is it just the interior guys that has to carry this group? So I do like Denard Wilson as a defensive coordinator. So this team, again, if they add a significant edge rusher, a massive boost from 29. New Orleans Saints at 28. For so long, they've had a really solid defense. Last year, they took a step down, and now it's the first time in forever that's going to be a non-Dennis Allen defense. They have a bunch of guys that fit that defense. A lot of ball players, a lot of smart ball players, but now how much are they going to fit the new Brandon Staley defense? The adjustment's going to be interesting, so it just doesn't feel as good as your typical New Orleans Saints defense, but I definitely don't think it's the worst defense football. In Cincinnati, I was actually going to have a little lower, but because they definitely struggled last year. But sounds like Trey Hendrickson's going to be back out there with them, a star pass rusher. And then some of the young guys are actually stepping up. Hearing good things about them: Shamar Stewart, Miles Murphy. Interior, they need to get better in the interior, but they have depth, actually, some young depth in the interior. Linebackers, they've added some young players there on top of Logan Wilson, being back. And we missed some games last year, obviously, but a very solid linebacker. Young guys in the secondary. They add Al Golden, who did a really good job at the college level, but a lot of young players for him to coach here on top of the veteran Trey Hendrickson. It's probably going to be a tougher defense to game plan for. Not the toughest defense, obviously, but a tougher one to game plan for. It's new, a lot of blitz, just different from the rest of the league. So they get a little bit of boost from me from that. That stops them from being at the very bottom. It's still a weaker defense. They'll give up a lot through the air and on the ground at times. The Browns at 26, they do have the best defensive player in football, Myles Garrett, and they do have some other studs like Denzel Ward. I mean, a couple things here. I mean, the linebacker, they're beat up there, obviously. Well, Hicks retired, actually. JOK is out for the year, so that's pretty tough. And then Garrett and Ward, you could argue they have to carry a little bit, but offense doesn't help them out at all, really. But they've been a very predictable defense under Jim Schwartz. Way too much man coverage. I'm not against man, but it gets to the point where it's predictable and teams go play against the Browns, and it's like, all right, they're going to be in man coverage. We kind of know the play. Unless it happens all the time, teams just surprisingly switch up what coverages they run. So maybe the Browns do that, then they get a boost. We'll see. The Falcons should take a step up this year. The defense was pretty brutal. Teams were throwing all over them last year. Really felt like a couple guys in secondary had to carry them, but they drafted pretty well. You can't expect a ton from the rookies right away. Hearing really good things about James Pierce, though, but they got good rookies all over the secondary. Again, you can't expect a ton, but bringing in Jeff Ulbrich should give him a boost. A very, very good, smart defensive coach, play caller on the defensive side. Interior defense, a little bit of a question, but the Falcons' young defense should get a little bit of a boost compared to last year, where that pass defense was really having them towards the bottom. Number 24, the Washington Commanders. This is going to be one of those defenses. We'll talk about a few of them that are actually better than how they look on paper. They don't look 24 on paper. They actually might look worse, but Dan Quinn, a great defensive mind. And I do like the cornerback group. Full year at Marshawn Lattimore. Mikey Sainristil was awesome last year. They draft Trey Amos. They signed Jonathan Jones. It's a pretty good group there. Safety, a little on the weaker side, where they lost Jeremy Chen. They'll survive without him, obviously. Linebacker unit is good. I think Frankie Louvu is underrated, but what the linebacker unit does have to do better is consistently stop the run, in my opinion. And that's where they're really weak at the end of last year. Typically, teams that can't stop or that bad stopping the run, they don't go that far in the playoffs. So they might have been fortunate to get there with that run defense, and it really killed them against the Eagles, obviously. So the run defense needs to step up. There's nothing that they've added that really says they will. Kinlaw, decent addition. No more Jonathan Allen. I know he missed games last year. Edge, they could be better, but they add Von Miller. I could see Von Miller playing a little bit better than he did for the Buffalo Bills, for the Commanders playing a little better. So it's all about coaching and those corners and the linebackers for Washington. The Colts at 23, they should give a little bit of a boost here. Lou Anarumo is a really good defensive mind. I like the defensive line, up front. Obviously, the linebacker a little lacking. To add Ward and Bynum in the secondary, so that should boost it a little bit there. The corner group should definitely get a boost adding Ward because they have Kenny Moore as well. But I like the defensive front. Again, Anarumo is a really good defense coordinator. The more I'm talking about the Colts, they got some stud players. They could end up being a little higher in this. Chicago Bears at 22. Interesting team to rank because they add Dennis Allen, a really good, respected defensive coach. I always had one knock on him. It's just a little bit too much man coverage where it becomes predictable, and that kind of ends up evident in the big games, like in the playoffs. Always kind of took a step down there. But at the end of the day, across the board, a really good defensive coordinator will have the Bears defense playing better. I love Jalen Johnson. The secondary should be solid. I think the linebacker unit should be pretty solid. It's just everything we just said, makes them a pretty good defense, but two big things, obviously, consistent pass rush and run defense, very, very important to me. And the pass rush could be solid, and it'll get a boost from Dennis Allen's blitz, but you wish that the edge group would be a little more consistent. Sweat has to be more consistent. Run defense was one of the very worst in football last year. I'd imagine it's a little better this year, but how much better is it going to be? So that run defense does need to take a step up. So a little tricky to rank the Bears because they're lacking some significant things there, but there is some things to like. The Dolphins at 21, statistically, they finished much better than 21 last year. Well, that was last year, and stats can be very misleading when it comes to defense because they had a stretch of games where they couldn't score points. Their opponents knew it, when Tua was out, I should say, and teams kind of hit the brakes. They, just ran the football, ran the clock. So that is why statistics can be extremely misleading in general, but especially when it comes to team defense. But at the same time, I do like Anthony Weaver as a defensive coordinator. The Dolphins did get better and better as the year went on in terms of defense. I like the defensive front if it's healthy. Sealer, obviously a stud, just got paid. Kenneth Grant was a huge Kenneth Grant fan. They have a number of pass rushers as long as they're healthy out there. Linebacker unit could be a little better. Secondaries, corner, they're really lacking right now at corner. That's a problem. Minkah Fitzpatrick, good addition, may have to carry that secondary. Dallas Cowboys at 20, they finished statistically a lot lower than this last year, but they had a lot of injuries. Obviously, they couldn't stop the run, but the injury, they basically had no secondary at one point. They were out of corners, throughout some games, and it was just free cheese down the field. So Corner actually looks good once they get healthy, and they are healthy right now with Trevon Diggs, Deron Bland. They also they draft Savone Revel, which is pretty big, obviously. They're pretty deep off the edge as long as Micah Parsons is out there, and having Micah Parsons, makes the defense, pretty solid alone. Interiors, yeah, kind of where you wonder a little bit. They do need to do a better job stopping the run. You remember Overshown is starting the year injured. If he's in there and they're fully healthy, they get a bigger boost from 20. They add Matt Eberflus as defensive play caller, defensive coordinator. Terrible head coach. Actually a decent defensive coach. His time with the Colts as defensive coordinator, he did a really good job for a defense that didn't look that great on paper. The Jets at 19, there was several years where the Jets, I felt, looked almost elite on paper. Maybe that's a little strong on paper, but just did not live up to those expectations. So they still look pretty good on paper. I know the offense hasn't really helped them out a ton, but, they add Aaron Glenn. I wonder about the edge group. It's not bad. It needs to stay healthy. Can Will McDonald, progress or repeat that last season? So it's a defense that love the linebackers. Sauce Gardner out there as well is obviously huge. Quinnen Williams at the interior defensive line position, but can they play up to, how they look on paper? Will the edge group hold up? We'll see. The Rams at 18. The Rams are another one of those teams where they were brutal stopping the run last year. They do add Poona Ford, really good run stopping nose tackle, so that could be the piece that they needed. But linebacker unit and corner unit really, really lacking, especially that linebacker unit. It's a big reason why they couldn't stop the run. It really hurt them when playing the Eagles down the stretch. So just wish they would get a little bit better at that spot, but they have the pass rush, some young players that can continue to step up, decent young safety group as well, but they keep developing these young defenders, so maybe that gives them another boost. Tampa Bay at 17, they're a tricky team to rank too, because they'll every year it feels like they have a stretch where they just can't defend the pass. Teams will just air it out, throw all over them, and it's like, yeah, they got good names in the secondary. Why is this happening? Well, they've been a little lacking at the edge position. They do add Hassan Reddick. Which Hassan Reddick are we going to get? Love the run defense, but they do get a little stronger in the secondary. They add a couple guys, through the draft that I really like in Morrison and Parrish. So on paper, they look pretty solid. It's just, they can't have those moments where they really struggle against the pass. They do get a little predictable with their cover 3 defense. I do love zone defense, but I wish they would mix it up a little bit more. They got, again, very predictable specifically what type of coverage they are going to be in. But I do love that they stop the run. The interior defensive line, led by Vita Vea, and the linebackers, they typically stop the run at a very high level, and that's very important for big games and playoffs. I can't really take teams' defenses fully serious if they do not have a good run defense. The Bucs don't have to worry about that. 16, the Buffalo Bills, another team that statistically ends up finishing better than 16 pretty consistently. I do think it seems like their defense really dominates their division rivals twice a year. Seems to be a thing. Impressive when they play the Miami Dolphins. When they play the more explosive offenses, though, we've seen it last year, we see it every year, they give up quite a bit, and mainly on the ground, but also through the air as well. They do have some good players. They're just an inconsistent defense in my eyes. They got some pass rushers, but sometimes they disappear. Interior defensive line, sometimes they're showing out. Sometimes they just cannot stop the run. Linebacker units all going to be about health. Looking at a guy like Matt Milano specifically. Secondary, Benford, really emerging. I think he has to carry the group a little bit. But, their first round pick, Hairston, dealing with an injury right now. It's just little inconsistent. Want them to be more consistent there. Want them to play a little better against, those bigger teams that they play during the regular season or in the playoffs as well, the better offenses. Number 15, the New York Giants, a big boost for them. The defensive front looks ridiculous. Dexter Lawrence, the best defensive tackle in football. They add Abdul Carter on top of Brian Burns, on top of Kayvon Thibodeau. It's a really good defensive front. Decent at linebacker, not great, not terrible at all. Corner, they have some solid young corners. They had Paulson Adebo this offseason. They had Javon Holland on top of already having a solid young safety in Tyler Newman. So the defense looks pretty damn solid. The offense can make it a little more difficult for them, so that'd be the big question there. Love that defensive front. San Francisco 49ers finished much lower statistically last year. A lot of injuries. I feel like they got better what they've added, especially through the draft. They added a lot of solid pieces, but specifically they added defenders in the draft that specialize in stopping the run. I feel like they're polished run defenders even without playing in the NFL yet. That's what the 49ers need. They need to stop the run at a better level. And they'll do that. They have Nick Bosa, star player. They have by far the best linebacker in football, Fred Warner. Their young secondary is very underrated. It's a better secondary than people think. Big thing here, They add back Robert Saleh to be that defensive coordinator. This defense was built for him to be that, that for that scheme. So that is a very good defensive mind. Not the greatest head coach we saw, but a very good defensive mind. So that gives the 49ers a massive, massive boost on top of the guys they've added. Green Bay Packers at 13, one of those defenses that are better than they actually look on paper. They don't look super strong on paper. They play much, much better, and they really got going at the end of last year. You give them a knock because they lost Alexander. They cut Alexander, but when they really got going, when they turned the corner, they didn't have Jair Alexander at the end of last year. Xavier McKinney really gave this secondary a boost. They add Nate Hobbs to it. They have a lot of young players. When they played the Eagles in the playoffs, that was the toughest task, it felt like, for that Eagles offense. They actually weren't able to do a ton, and things were going the Eagles' way in that game. So the Packers really turned the corner. They have a number of pass rushers, young players up front. They need to be a little more consistent getting after the quarterback, though. Chiefs at 12. I think the Chiefs take a little bit of a step down on defense, maybe around the same range, but statistically end up finishing higher in this. They have Chris Jones. They have George Karlaftis. They have McDuffie, some stud players there. They'll miss Justin. They typically don't miss defensive backs, it seems, but I think they'll miss Justin Reed a little bit there, but very, very, very well coached under Spagnuolo. Arizona Cardinals at 11. I got them taking a big step up. Big fan of Jonathan Gannon, the way he calls the defense. A very underrated defensive coach, even though he's their head coach. And they've added some significant pieces. I plan on having the Cardinals in the top 10, like easily top 10. They have suffered, which would be quite bold probably to some people, but they have suffered some injuries early at the corner position. They have added some young corners. The last couple of years, not just they added multiple in the draft this year, but guy like last year, Max Melton, I think he has a lot of upside, but suffered some injuries there. And then Walter Nolan, adding him, they've added other defenders, Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell off the edge, Josh Sweat be a big one, but Walter Nolan dealing with a little bit of an injury situation right now, which he'll be back early, but it's just hard for him for us to get the full Walter Nolan right away. So they take a little bit of hit because of some early injuries. Seattle Seahawks at 10. Mike McDonald, a great defensive coach. I love the interior defensive line. High upside with Byron Murphy. Love his game, what he could be, I should say. Leonard Williams, love his game right now. Fantastic. Edge, they have a lot of depth. It's just not consistent enough. Lawrence could help with that, but let's see if he can stay healthy. Secondary is pretty solid. Witherspoon, Julian Love, Tariq Woolen, pretty good group all around. It felt like they really got going at the end of last year, holding teams to kind of limited points there. Detroit Lions coming at number 9. They do lose Aaron Glenn. I don't think they'll, it was not going to be like losing Ben Johnson. I think the offense could take a little bit of a hit. Defense, Aaron Glenn's great, gets the guys prepared, kind of unique, but in terms of his random, blitz calls, but a little too much man coverage for my liking. Maybe that helps if they mix it up now. We'll see if they do that. They add DJ Reed to the secondary. They have an awesome safety duo. Linebacker unit's pretty solid as long as Anzalone's healthy out there. Defensive front, they struggled at the end of last year, but they do get some guys back healthy. They're typically good stopping the run, even though they didn't finish that way. They could get back on track there very easily. Pass rush is kind of the question. Aiden Hutchinson could be a star. He's coming off a gruesome injury, so I'm confident he'll be very solid, but where will he be at? And no one else to kind of really help him out there. So that's kind of the question with the Detroit Lions. Got to stay healthy. Guys are kind of trying to come back from an injury and something else or the same thing. One or the other was injured. So hopefully they kind of can slow. They've already had a couple injuries this, nothing major, but hopefully they can kind of get back to normal there and staying healthy on that defense. Number 8, the New England Patriots. They should get a big boost. The corner duo for starters looks awesome as long as Gonzalez is healthy and Carlton Davis. I should say both because Carlton Davis has had some injury concerns in the past and Gonzalez a little shaken up early in training camp. But, that's a star corner duo. The safety group has potential. Peppers, Duggar has been looking like a future star at one point, but last year struggled a little bit. I think he'd play much better with this new staff. Mike Vrabel's going to have the guys prepared. He's going to have this defense balling. They get better at the off-ball linebacker position. They had Harold Landry off the edge, which is not the greatest player in the world, but he's pretty consistent getting sacks and then dropping in coverage as an edge rusher as well. Hearing really good things about Keon White in terms of training camp. But remember, they didn't have They had Barmore without having Barmore last year, right? On the roster, wasn't out there. That's a star defensive tackle. And they add Milton Williams. So this is a defense that's going to stop the run. They're going to defend the pass. They're going to blitz. They're going to be well prepared under Mike Vrabel. The more I'm talking about, the more I'm excited about it. The corners have to stay healthy. Chargers at 7. The Chargers are the ultimate team where they are way better than how they look on paper. Not a big stats guy, especially when it comes to defense, but they were the number one scoring defense last year. It's got to mean something, right? Super well coached, very unpredictable, mixing up their coverages. You saw a lot of man cover too, and mixing up everything last year, not just sticking with one or the other, which some teams do, even some good defenses do. But the pass rush should be solid. Tui Pelotu should continue to step up, and they have Khalil Mack, obviously. The interior defensive line is what I worry about. Losing Poona Ford is a little tough, but Caldwell's a rookie that can really step up. Underrated linebacker group. Love Henley. We could see Junior Colson stepping up this year. An underrated secondary. Some stud young corners from last year's class, with Hart and Still. And they dealt... they were the number one scoring defense last year, and they had a disastrous streak of having corner injuries last year at one point. They were running out of corners. So it's pretty ridiculous. So there's a lot of upside there, and they have a really good safety group. Derwin James, a star. Alohi Gilman, very underrated. So once you get a deep dive, and on paper, it starts to look a little bit better. They add Dante Jackson to the corner group as well. So, it's just a very well-coached defense that's very underrated. The Vikings at number 6, they were up here finishing last year, and that's mainly due to some stud players they have. But Brian Flores, one of the better defensive minds in the game, very unpredictable defense, a lot of blitz, but later in his career been mixing in more zone coverages. Early in his career saw a lot more man, but a lot more zone compared to his Patriots-Dolphins days. So that's fantastic. They had the number 2 run defense last year, and they add Javon Hargrave. They add Jonathan Allen on top of having Harrison Phillips. They had one of the better pass rushes in football with Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel. They have Dallas Turner kind of waiting behind those guys. And again, they added those guys in the interior. They have a really good linebacker unit. The issue is the secondary. They have some good ball players. Hearing really good things about Jeff Okudah and Byron Murphy, actually one of the more valuable defensive backs, his ability to line up inside and out. But the front 7 definitely could boost, like it did last year, that secondary. So the secondary is the only thing that's kind of holding them back to being elite status. But Brian Flores and what they've added that group is something. Denver Broncos at 5, really solid group. Hearing really good things about them. They played very well last year. They started to kind of tail off at the end of last year, especially with the pass defense. Teams are finding out they can throw downfield in the middle of the field against them. But they've added some pieces there, so that could help them. It's just mainly with that, it's all about staying healthy with the couple of Niners guys they picked up in free agency, Ofunga and Greenlaw. Those guys got to stay healthy. They get a bigger boost with that. But if those guys are hurt, they kind of take a hit. But they got a really good front. Zach Allen, Franklin Myers. They got DJ Jones, another good run stuffer, obviously up front. Solid linebacker unit if it's healthy. Patrick Surtain, maybe the best in football on that side of the ball. He's the best corner in football, that's for sure. So it's a really good balanced defense all the way through. Steelers at number 4, that defensive line is ridiculous. Led by TJ Watt, but they have Alex Highsmith. Herbig's actually very underrated. Defensive front, Cam Hayward. Keanu Benton's got a lot of upside like him, but they add Derek Harmon, an absolute perfect fit for that defensive front. That is a loaded defensive front. Behind it, it's not the best, but the defensive line might be the best in football. Behind it, it's, a decent linebacker unit. Guys like Peyton Wilson could step up a little bit. And then in terms of the secondary, no more Minka. They add Ramsey, so that helps them a little bit there. Number 3, the Baltimore Ravens. They started a little slow last year, but they kind of figured things out. They had the number 1 run defense in football, and I believe they have the best secondary in football. And they add to their pass rush group. They have a lot of young players emerging, stepping up, but they add Mike Green, which is a natural pass rusher to that group. So that's big as well. Really good linebacker unit led by Roquan Smith. But being well coached and having the best run defense in football pretty consistently up there, it's big. If you can stop the run at that high of a level, it boosts your whole defense. And then having the best secondary and adding to that edge group, it's huge for the Baltimore Ravens. So I got them at number 3. Philadelphia Eagles, who were the number 1 defensive football last year, I have them at number 2. They do lose guys like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. Other guys will step up. I'm not worried about their edge group, somebody stepping up. But it's a little tough losing Sweat. Losing Milton Williams, somebody will probably step up, but they won't be as good, but they'll still be very good. Jalen Carter is a star in the making, obviously. Secondary looks really, really strong. I know Gardner Johnson's gone, but they add Makuba. They're very well coached under Vic Fangio on defense. Zach Bond was awesome. Unreal for them at the linebacker position. So it very well could be one of those top elite defenses. Again, I have the Houston Texans as the number one defense in football for this upcoming year. The way things ended, I felt like they were like in big games and playoff games. I felt everything combined, down the stretch. Felt like they were playing this like the second best defense football behind the Philadelphia Eagles. But DeMeco Ryans a very, very one of the best defensive minds in football. Will Anderson stepped up big time last year. He'll continue to step up. Danielle Hunter was a star for them last year. That pass rush group is ridiculous. I guess they could get a little better in the interior, but they're just so well coached, always end up playing better than they look on paper. Their linebacker group is really solid and really, really deep. Talk about deep, the secondary is loaded. One of the better corner duos with an elite Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, and then the safety group. They got so many options. There's just unlimited options in the secondary. They add C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's a stud. They have Petrie. They have Bullock. They have so many. That secondary is absolutely. When you have that loaded of a secondary with that pass rush duo, pretty ridiculous. So I think putting all that together with the coach, I think they have the best defense in football. I'd say secondary-wise, the Ravens and the Texans you could argue that. I think it's between those two. I've seen a lot of people arguing other teams, but I think those two are the best secondaries in football for this year. It's really about just staying healthy with that group for the Texans. But I have them number one. We have to take a look at some fans' takes as well. Ex-subscribers rank their defenses. Ian has the Ravens 1, the Chiefs 2, Steelers 3, Eagles 4, Broncos, Vikings. So some similarity. I believe I have the Broncos 5, Vikings 6. Yeah, Texans down at 7. I'd be a little higher on them. Obviously, I have them at 1. Seahawks, Packers, Lions. So a lot of similarities. Yeah, surprise the Chiefs at 2. Just missed Bills, Rams, Patriots, Cardinals, Niners, Colts. Yeah, the Colts are underrated. The more I was talking about them, they're pretty solid. Aiden Weingartner also has the Texans at 1, Steelers at 2, Broncos, Chiefs. Fans are high on the Chiefs here. I think they're pretty damn good. Very well coached. Ravens, Vikings, Eagles, Patriots, Rams, Giants. So a little lower on the Eagles. Giants are making their way up. It's good to see. Fitz as the Broncos 1, Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, Seahawks. So high on the Broncos, the Seahawks. Not necessarily saying too high. Ravens, Patriots, Steelers, Chargers, and the Lions. So, some similarities there. It's a long shot with the Titans with Big Jeff playing edge. Also, they are looking very solid in camp. Yeah, I think if Snead's out there, maybe if they just add another edge rusher, the Titans would get a massive boost. It's like that last piece that would just make them that much better. King has no order. Bears, Ravens, Steelers, Vikings, Eagles, Patriots, Broncos, Chiefs, Bucks, Seahawks. So, surprised to see the Bears, and I know they're going to be better this year. They have Dennis Allen in there. A little high. The Bucks, a little surprising to see them up there, but I do love the way they stopped the run. They should be better this year as well. Big outs for this upcoming season. Texans, Ravens, Steelers. So, a lot of similarities here. Eagles, Vikings, Broncos, Rams. Rams and Bills a little high there. Packers, Chiefs, but good to see you. And the Rams, maybe the last piece of the puzzle was Poona Ford. I do think the linebacker unit's a little lacking. Maybe a rookie like Chris Paul could step up, but the Rams did get a lot. They got a lot better defensively down the stretch. But as soon as they play a team that was, they could run the football like the way the Eagles did, it's a little bit of a problem there, obviously. But so I just wish they would just take the linebacker unit a little more serious. So the Eagles do that, and then boom, they win the Super Bowl, best defense football last year. So there you have it for this one. Let me know your rankings, your thoughts. Who was too high, who was too low in the comments. Appreciate you guys. A lot of content rolling out, even more to come. Can't wait for the in-season content. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.